Welcome to the Sisterhood of Healing podcast, the podcast that wants to help you reach your best and most divine potential. Each week, we dive into topics concerning inner healing, wellness, and spirituality. We discuss strategies and practice from our own personal experiences regarding higher energies, trauma, and connecting to the divine as we take you through our own personal journeys to discover the highest versions of ourselves. In combination with guest speakers, we bring you a comprehensive guide to mental and spiritual wellness and the ability to connect to yourself and the world around you on a deeper level. I'm Nicole, and I'm Christina, and we are two sisters who want to take you along on our spiritual and healing journey. We are each on our own individual healing and spiritual path and bring unique perspectives regarding yoga, chakra healing, meditation, intuition, and trauma healing. Sometimes life is messy, sometimes it's confusing, and sometimes everything falls perfectly into place. Join us as we navigate the path to divine enlightenment together. Hello, sisters, brothers, and all non-binary listeners, and welcome to episode 5 of the Sisterhood of Healing podcast. On today's episode, we're going to be talking to Kez Seery, and she's a menstrual coach based out of the UK. And she's going to help us learn about our cycles, how to honor our cycles, and really work with changing our perspective on kind of how society has taught us to understand and be with ourselves during that time. So let's get into it.
Hello, everyone. We are so excited for this episode today. We have Kez Seery on, and she is a menstrual cycle coach. So we're super excited to have this conversation. As women, we're very interested in menstrual cycles and kind of stumbled across your social media and thought what you did was super interesting. So yeah, very much looking forward to having this conversation with you today.
Yeah, thank you for having me on.
Of course. So can you just start by introducing yourself and just telling us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so I'm Kez. I live in the UK, so I live in England, in the Midlands. You might be able to tell by my accent. So I'm a lover of all things sort of spiritual and not of this world, but at the same time, I love a bit of science. I'm a psychology graduate. I'm a menstrual cycle coach, and I just can't get enough of reading and learning about how our bodies work, like on a physical and energetic level. Yeah, so I work with women, helping them to reconnect with the menstrual cycle whilst getting curious about parts of their cycle that they love and which parts need a bit extra love. And I love to help women to drop societal conditioning by putting their own physical, spiritual, and emotional needs first.
Oh, cool. So how did you get into being a menstrual coach?
Okay, so I did my psychology degree, and I always wanted to work with people, but I was unsure how. And back then it was 5 years ago, and I didn't really know about the coaching world. But I knew I wanted to help people, but not in the sense of I didn't want to be a psychologist, but I just didn't know what I wanted to be. And anytime anybody asked me, what do you want to do? I was like, I don't know. I had no clue. I felt very lost. But then 2020 happened, and Melanie's self-love lifestyle coaching course popped up on my feed. So someone just told me that I needed to do that. So I did that. And I still was a bit like, oh, I don't know what to do. And then just little nudges sort of pushed me towards menstrual cycle coaching. But between that, I was chefing at yoga retreats and like yoga teacher training courses and other events. And I just love that whole world. Like I could just live in that world. And I just feel like the little nudges just pushed me like further into sort of the woman sort of sphere, I suppose. Yeah.
Very cool.
And it's important that you listen to those little nudges too. I think that means you're very connected to your intuition as well.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a lot of nudges. I went to a yoga retreat, and someone just called me to go there, and I'd never done nothing like that before, but then like that was the first step towards everything else, and it just aligned so effortlessly. yeah, it's beautiful.
And did you always know? So you said that you're very much into the spirituality and like women's health and whatnot. Did you always know that you wanted your focus to be on the menstrual cycle, women's menstrual health, and that, or is that something that you fell into as well?
So I always knew that I wanted to work with women, and I always knew that I wanted to work in the health sort of world, but I just didn't know the connection. I didn't know like how I wanted to work. I actually many years ago wanted to go to uni to become a dietitian, but at the time the woman who was interviewing me put me off and was like, my self-doubt got in the way and I didn't do that. So I took a massive detour. But yeah, so all these years later, I knew it was health, women, and like the holistic aspect, which I feel that cycle coaching is very holistic. So I think I did always want to, but I didn't know what the label was or the title. So yeah.
So what does a typical coaching session with you look like?
Okay, so we would get to know what the client already knows. So we talk about the different phases and what you already know about that phase. So you might know that you feel a bit irritated like the week before you bleed. You might know that you feel really relaxed when you're on your period. You might know that your energy rises. So there's certain things that you already know, and it's just sort of me talking with you and sort of finding them things out. And then we would look at the things that you don't really enjoy and like sort of ways to befriend them aspects. I think that's one of the main things with cycle coaching. It's about sort of integrating even the bits that you don't love. And it doesn't mean that you're going to love everything about your cycle, because I feel like that's just the dream, isn't it? That's probably never going to happen.
No.
Yeah, it's just about working with it. So I just help guide women to do that, really. Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of parts of our cycles. I know there's parts of my cycles where I'm like, why is this happening? Why do I feel like this? And mapping that out really does help you I don't know, make peace. I don't know if that's the right phrase to use. Make peace with your cycle, or like
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, not resent it, and like work better with your body too.
Yeah. I feel like we have society puts it on us that you're going to feel bad the week before you bleed. You're going to have your bleed and you're not going to enjoy it, but it doesn't have to be that way. Like my bleed is a spiritual practice to me, and I look forward to it so much. And I know that's like people suffer like they have pain, like there is issues, but I feel like society puts it on us from a young age that it's going to be bad, it's a curse, and you shouldn't embrace it. But I think that's changing now, so I'm excited.
I think that's a beautiful thing that you say that yours is a spiritual practice and you look forward to it. That's such an incredible mindset to have. And I think it's a really great mindset shift for us as women to make, because we really do resent this week. We're like, oh, it's gonna be bad. Like you said, it's called the curse. It's so true, but it really is such a beautiful thing. Like it allows you to bring forth life. It like there's so many things that are connected to your cycle, and society does make us see it as this terrible thing, and it's really not. It's rejuvenating. Like you get to like rejuvenate your body, your mind, like your soul, like every month. So
I know we are totally taught to resent it, but I think we need to learn to appreciate how beautiful having a cycle is, because like you said, like that helps you bring life into the world. And I know like there's of course a ton of people who have irregular cycles, so to have a regular cycle or even just to experience it irregularly, like it's something that needs to be appreciated.
Yeah. And I know a lot of women struggle with pain, so I understand that mentality, like it's coming and they know it's coming and they know it's not going to be a nice experience. But I think even working with that, like working with pain, working with the pain and sort of making peace with it in a sense, that can help make it less of a challenge.
I'm curious, your clients, are a lot of them like on birth control, not on birth control? Like is there a preference for like who you would prefer to work with, like being not on birth control or on it?
Yeah. So some birth control, you still have a natural bleed. Most of my clients are not on birth control, but it's not that you can't do this work if you are. You could cycle with the moon, so it's kind of gives you an anchor point. And a lot of this work I feel is about checking in with yourself every day and seeing where you are. And I think you can do that at any stage, whether you're bleeding regularly or not. But just bearing in mind that if you are on like oral contraception that's hormone based, then your hormones are sort of, they're not gonna flow as they do normally, so it's not like a normal bleed, so it will be different, but you can still work with that in certain ways.
That's interesting. Yeah, I've been off of birth control since 2019, and I feel like I'm finally getting more regular now, but it's still really different. But I'm noticing the hormones more like as the natural hormones regulate, and it's so wild because I kind of feel like a teenager again. Like
Your skin does.
my skin does, but like even the pain but it's definitely like reconnecting. Like there was a point where I realized that I needed to like mentally reconnect with my body because it had been controlled by medication, like oral contraceptives, for so long.
Yeah, like I was put on birth control at 17 because of pain, because I had just severe cramping with my periods and I couldn't function. And then I just disconnected with my body. Like I wasn't able to identify like all those shifts in my hormones, because obviously like I didn't have any shifts in my hormones. And then I went off of it and I started to be able to identify those shifts, and then I got pregnant. So I don't know if I've experienced like a good bleed since I was a teenager. Yeah, so I'm kind of looking forward to experiencing that again one day.
I was gonna say, you've got all that to come now.
Yeah.
It can be very empowering, especially when you start noticing things and you start noticing the patterns, and I feel you can just like have more grace and a bit more compassion with yourself, because you know it's a cycle and it's going to come back around, and that day doesn't define you. Like you might be having the worst day ever, but it's not gonna, well, hopefully it's not gonna last, you know.
Yeah, when you can identify that, it really helps you to cope with like what's going on in your head and how you see the world around you and how you take things in. Makes such a difference, I think.
It can be such a struggle, especially it can be such a struggle, especially just before you bleed, when that voice comes up and it's like the inner critic and it's pointing out all the flaws, and it's really can be very like distracting from life, you know. But it can also be embraced. You can befriend that and work with it, which is so powerful.
So true.
So what are some of the benefits if a client decided that they wanted to work with you? What are some of the benefits of having a coach?
So the ripple effects are huge. So you get to reconnect with your body, and this like goes out into the rest of your life. So you could be able to set firmer boundaries, which creates like more easy relationships. Your productivity could be sort of increased, even though I feel that working with your cycle is not about productivity and it's not about using the cycle to be productive, but incorporating it and working with it can make things flow a little bit more easier. So in the long run, you can be more productive. So each phase has different sort of joys and shadows, and when you can learn to notice what the joys and the shadows of each phase are, you can embrace them, or you can get the tools to work with them so that it's not too much of a struggle. And then you can start to integrate them into your life so things are a bit less resistance, if you know what I mean.
So under like I know exactly what you mean. There's times where like I don't necessarily feel like I'm comfortable with how my body's feeling at the time, and it definitely does create a lot of that like mental resistance to how you approach the world, or like how you show up in the world around you. So I can definitely relate to what you're saying. It definitely does resonate.
I feel like society as well, it favours the nicer parts of your cycle. I say that with inverted commas, I think the word is. So like your spring and then your ovulation, like we know we need to be out in the world smiling and being happy, but that's not who we are. We're not always smiling, we're not always happy. And the times where we're not feeling that, like we should still be out and we should be happy to go out. I know it's easier said than done because we're totally conditioned to not want to be, you know, introspective and feeling a bit lower in energy. But I think that's why this work is so powerful, because it helps us sort of embrace all of them aspects, even the less society accepted ones.
Yeah, that's a big one society puts on you. So how did you discover the connection with yourself and your body? Because we're talking about understanding, you know, your cycle more, so then you can be, like you said, more productive, or know when you need to be more introspective. So how did you discover connection with yourself and your body, and what do you do to maintain that connection?
So I discovered my connection really slowly. So from the age of 14 to, I'd say, about 31, I was disconnected and disassociated from my body because I was using substances at the time to cope with life. I didn't realise at the time. But once I stopped self-medicating, I just naturally pivoted towards practicing yoga. Like something just popped in my head to just go on YouTube and Google it, and I ended up finding Yoga with Adriene, and I just fell in love. And then I started going to the gym, I switched up my eating habits, and I just took more care of myself. So looking back now, I feel like these were like me grounding into my body and sort of just settling in. And yeah, my head was pretty much, it was in the clouds for, like I say, from 14 to 31. So it really was a slow process, but it's been 5 years now. And like I feel like a different person. So much has changed. Like my boundaries are really strong. I've got dreams for the future. I'm really passionate about stuff. Whereas before I didn't really, there was no connection to sort of real life. So I maintain this connection by tracking daily. I move and I take time each morning to sort of stretch, and I journal. Like, I don't do this perfectly. This isn't every morning, but most mornings I like stretch and I journal, and I do a bit of meditation. And when I say a bit, I mean literally 3 minutes. I just, because I'm away to work, so I just give myself, I think it works out to about 20 minutes in the morning of just grounding into my body. And I ask myself, like, because even if I wake up in the morning and I'm feeling amazing, by the time the afternoon comes, I might not be feeling the same way. So I'll sort of check in with myself throughout the day, and I try and listen and honour what my body's asking for. So today I had a free day, and I was doing some stuff on my computer, but it was a bit overwhelming and my head was getting cloudy. And I thought, you know what, I need to save my energy because I'm coming on the podcast. So I listened to my body and had a little nap for like half an hour. And then I come back and I just feel so much better. So I think it's just that, I honour how I'm feeling. I think that's the main way I keep connection with my body.
Yeah, it's so important to just slow down and take that time for yourself so you can actually identify how you're feeling and be able to work through that.
Yeah, and our societies, I mean, between the UK and Canada, our societies are just similar in many ways. And I think that, you know, they tell us to like keep going, keep being busy, keep being productive. It doesn't really honor that need to slow down. Even like you said, you took a nap. That's so important. So many people that I work with and in my profession were exhausted, and we're like, oh, if only I could go home and take a nap, but I don't have time for that. But even just 10 or 15 minutes to honor that your body needs rest if you're that exhausted.
Oh, definitely. I feel like that's like society is linear and society works on 24/7. You know, you need to get up at 8 and you need to be going until bedtime, and that's just not sustainable, especially for us because we're cyclical. Our bodies aren't designed to be 24/7 go go go. Like the male hormones, they're 24/7, but ours aren't. And that's probably why so many women end up burnt out, and it's mainly women that have like chronic fatigue and other issues that are like similar, like fibromyalgia. It's mainly women.
Our mom actually has that.
So common.
We really are living in a man's world.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's changing though. There's companies, I'm not sure about in Canada, but in the UK, there's a few companies that are now doing like menstrual leave, and they're bringing these things into the workplace. Yeah, I think it's ASOS. I'm not sure if you have that in Canada. It's like a clothing
I've
company.
not heard of it. No,
I have not heard of that. That is super interesting.
I wonder if maybe some of the more modern and woke startups have that, but like definitely not. I'm a teacher, definitely not in teaching now.
Yeah,
we go to school sick all the time. So.
Oh yeah, I know a few teachers, and yeah, they struggle a bit.
Yeah, our days off are for marking or for mental health.
Yes.
So, how does the mind and body connection affect the menstrual cycle, or does it even?
So I feel like, as I mentioned earlier, like holistically, everything's connected. So the fact that you can just think of a certain thing, get goosebumps, and like you experience emotion, and you got like water falling from your eyes, I just feel like it can never be denied. But I've got an example. So I hurt my shoulder a while back, and I'm a cleaner, so it wasn't getting any better. And I was stuck in this cycle of pain, and I'd have a couple of days off and it'd get better, and then I'd go back to work and it'd get worse. But the stress of thinking about this pain was making it worse because I was getting tense. So I had that pain for about 2 years. And at one point I was like, I can't do this no longer. And I made peace with it. And I know it sounds so like, it sounds daft, like I made peace with it. But in my head, I was like, I can't do this. I need to just work with it. So now it's 90% better than it was. And I was at a point before when I thought this is forever, like I'm stuck with this pain forever. And now like it's gone. It's not gone, it's like 90% better. But I tell this story because I feel like it relates to menstrual pain. We can expect that it's going to be bad, we can get tense, and like stress is inflammatory, so I just feel like it's a cycle. So yeah, I'm not sure if that answers the question, but that's what came to me anyway.
Yeah, it does actually. I have some questions actually related to that because I think that's pretty remarkable, and I think that's such a good life skill to have, to make peace with some of the things that you maybe can't control, especially when it comes to your own body, because that's really frustrating, right? Because you're like, this is happening to me, why can't this happen? What were some of the strategies you use, or like the tools that you use to make peace with that pain?
So I just consciously thought I'm not going to continue to be sort of controlled by it. And then when I'm cleaning, or if I can feel it getting tense, I kind of just stop and like take some breaths and sort of settle back into my body and release the tension. Because when I feel the tension come in, that's when it's when I used to start getting worried about it. Then I'd tense up even more. And before I knew it, I'd be like, oh my God, this is really hurting. So yeah, I just sort of recognize it, sort of breathe into it, I suppose, and don't let it sort of get my attention too much, which I know is so easier said than done when you're struggling with pain. But my next step of my cycle coaching journey is a course that focuses on like pain psychology, the nervous system. So I don't know yet exactly like the sort of clinical ways to help people, but I will have better tools for that in January. Yeah, once I've started my training.
We'll have to connect with you again next year.
Yeah.
Learn a little bit more, because that's pretty neat.
I'm very excited for that. I feel like it's so needed. The amount of people that I speak to who are suffering with pain, or it's not even a joke really. It's kind of crazy. It's very sad, and there's no way of, we're told just that's the way it is. Your period hurts, that's it, you got to deal with it. But it just doesn't have to be that way. Obviously there is medical conditions, and it's something, if you've got pain, it needs looking into, and it does need addressing. But it's not a given. Like it's not a given.
I learned a strategy, and I don't know if it might have actually been from your Instagram page where I learned it, where you like breathe into your pain and you like send breath and love down to your pain when you're having cramps. I don't know if that was from you.
That wasn't from me, no.
Okay.
I haven't started sharing that yet, because
but
I know it's such a I don't know what the word is. It's such a deep subject, and like it's stressful. It's quite traumatic for people, so I haven't delved into that just yet. But yeah, that does work. I think that's basically what you've just said. That's how I worked with my shoulder, is just to breathe into it and release it that way.
I wish I learned that skill a long time ago. Like I'm a yoga teacher, so just through my yoga practice, I learned how to send my breath to a certain area of my body, and now that helps me in so many different situations where I'm feeling pain in different areas of my body. And yeah, it's amazing what we can do for ourselves just with our mindset and our breath.
Oh yeah, it is fascinating. I love it.
So what is if we're looking at like our cycle and the practices we do, what is a menstruality cycle?
So a menstruality practice is different for everyone. I feel like the base of it is to like commit to showing up for yourself. So asking like, how do you feel? What do you need? What will serve you right now? So for me, like earlier, my head was getting all cloudy and I was like, what do I need? And I thought, a nap, just a half an hour nap, and it sorted me out. So just asking yourself, what boundaries do you need to set? So it's like honoring your menstruation and treating it as not as a spiritual practice. This is what I do myself, but it's just about recognizing that it's more than just blood. Like there's more to it. The phase can be deep in insights, and actually when you're bleeding, your brain is more in delta brainwave, I think. So the brainwave that you're in when you're meditating. So actually it's like it's a very insightful time. So I don't know, I feel like menstruality practices it's different for everyone. Yeah. And it sorry, I was going to say, you can actually honor, it's like you're honoring yourself and the flows of your nature. And you can also use it as well to pick out, not use it, but it can facilitate like finding out health problems. So it's a stress responsive system. And if you've got symptoms and there's things that keep coming up, it's like a pinpointing something. So during ovulation, a lot of the time, I suffer with really bad allergies. I haven't figured out what that is yet, but if I hadn't been tracking, I would just be thinking that I'm getting allergies on random days. But looking back, I know it's always on my ovulation. So it's something that I can look into, because actually estrogen is the hormone that's the highest in ovulation, and that can actually trigger histamine. But it's like a cycle, because histamine can create more estrogen. So that's really fun for me. Or not.
That's so fascinating. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow, our bodies are just such incredible. Like the way that, wow.
So smart.
Yeah.
It is amazing. It is amazing.
Wow. So what does a healthy menstrual cycle look like?
Okay, so I know society says it's 28 days, but it's really not. I think it's something like 7. I might be wrong with this, but it's around about 17% of women actually have a 28-day cycle. So a healthy menstrual cycle is actually between 21 and 35 days long. And the first day starts from the first full day of bleed up until the day before your next bleed. So your ovulation, you might feel a twinge. However, if it's really, really intense and it's like a really bad pain and it knocks you off your feet, it's worth seeing your healthcare provider about it. So bleeding is around about 3 to 7 days, and you might like get mild discomfort. That's normal. But again, if the pain isn't fixed by painkillers, or if it's that severe, again, that knocks you off your feet and you have to have time off work or time off school, then that's not normal. Like it's common, but it's really not normal. And it's likely suggesting that there's issues that need looking into. But ultimately you'll know what's normal for your body. And if things change from what your normal is, then you probably need to keep an eye on it. Which is why cycle tracking is so important. But as well, it's common for like a healthcare practitioner to turn you away if you don't have the data that they need. So if you go to your doctor or your healthcare provider and you've got 3 months worth of cycles, they've got something to work on, so it can kind of speed up the process if there is any underlying issues.
I think that's really important because there's so many women, I've heard so many stories, whether it's on social media or just having conversations with people I know about how they've been turned away from their doctors because
Yeah.
their doctors, like, they're coming in and saying, like, I've had this pain here, or my cycle's been really heavy for a long time, which is a really common one. Actually, I've talked to a lot of people about that, saying that it's just like they can't leave the house because it's so heavy,
Yeah.
and they've been told by their doctors or practitioners that, you know, it's just normal and like just kind of deal with it, sort of thing, which is really disappointing to hear, especially when someone knows, like, you know, your body. So that's I think that's when you're suggesting that we track it for at least 3 months, so we have that data, that's so important for us to understand our bodies, and so we can take that data to, like,
definitely.
here, look, like, this isn't just a one-off, it's something that's happening, it's a problem, like, and advocate for yourself, like, continue to advocate.
Yeah, or like the alternate solution, quote unquote, is when your doctor just prescribes you with hormonal birth control. That's gonna solve everything.
That's the first thing I think half the time. Like, it's so sad as well because that's just a band-aid. Like, I know people was put on that at the age of like 16 up until the age of 40. They were put on it at 16 for PCOS, and then they've just come off it at 40. But like, it's just, I understand back in the day, but now I don't even understand back in the day, to be honest with you. But I just feel, it's a very touchy subject because it's completely flatlining your hormones, and it changes so much in your body taking hormonal birth control. Obviously it can do good for people as well, but to use it as a band-aid when, you know, even like simple lifestyle fixes can help with whatever the issue is. Not always, obviously, but sometimes.
Yeah, I definitely noticed. So I've been off it for 3 years now, but I definitely noticed a difference when I was in my 20s and I went off it for a break, and then now, like, my cycle, boom, went right back to normal in my 20s, both times I went off it, and now it's just a little off. And it's been like that for 3 years. Like, it's consistently a little off. So I guess that's my new normal, but it really does affect you, like, the longer you've been on it, and I had never had any problems being on it. So yeah, it's now it's concerning, but
Do you track your cycle now that you're
now? Yeah, like, I don't write it down, but I know the days I'll be ovulating, the day I'm expected to bleed, like, and it does come like clockwork in that regard. So then I know everything's okay. It's just different than what it was before. Kind of thing. Yeah.
I think your body has to sort of settle back into its new way, I suppose.
Yeah.
What about you? If you said you've had a little one, do you say you're not menstruating at the minute?
So I'm currently pregnant. So I went off of hormonal birth control back in December to get pregnant. But I was using I don't know if you've heard of it in the UK. It's an app called Natural Cycles. So I use like the basal cell thermometer. Take my temperature every morning and then track it that way. And my cycle was actually like pretty spot on for like the 5 months that I was bleeding. But like, I don't know how much of that was still normal and consistent because I was still ridding my body of those synthetic hormones. So I'm interested what it's going to be like when it comes back again.
It's exciting, I suppose, because it's like a whole new reconnection with your body, isn't it? I can imagine it will be.
No, I feel like I finally have the opportunity to reconnect with myself and get to know who I am, like hormonally, emotionally, based on that. Because I was on birth control for 12 years, I think. So yeah, my body was just used to that.
Exciting.
Yeah, it really is.
So what does a healthy menstrual cycle look like? Because we think ours is pretty healthy, but
I mean,
we
gotta touch upon that. I mean, like, I would say like mine's like a 20-day cycle, but
so between 21 and 35 days long, that's considered healthy. And then bleeding for around 3 to 7 days. If you're bleeding for like over 7 days consistently, then that's probably worth checking out. There's also, I can't remember the mils, but there's certain mill of blood that equates to being really heavy, but I don't want to say what it is because I can't remember off the top of my mind. But yeah, like, you know what's normal for your body, and if that changes, then that's worth getting checked out.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's good advice.
So what is the greatest roadblock that you are consistently seeing in your clients? And how can our listeners address like these issues in their own lives?
So the greatest roadblock, I think, is people not wanting to sort of rest, and not wanting to sort of slow down. Even just taking a few minutes a day to just chill and just like get your nerves back down, because we're all like going around stimulated, overstimulated. We've got our heads in our phones. So I think that's the main roadblock, is people just go, you know, in a linear sort of masculine fashion, which obviously we need the masculine, but I think it can take over a bit. And then what was the other question? Sorry.
How can listeners address this in their own lives?
Okay, so Red School founders, they suggest the 1% rule, which I think is amazing. So everyone's different and everyone has like different lives and, you know, different things that they're able to do. So if you can just sprinkle in like 1% of rest here and there, it can be so life changing. It really can. So you might not be able to take your whole bleed off, or not even a whole afternoon off, but if you can just take like 1% of rest just to reconnect and sort of recalibrate, then that can be really life changing. And we can all afford 1%, even if like if I'm working and I can't like do what I usually do on my bleed, which is nothing, then I go slower. Like at work, I would just take it back a bit and I'll just move slower. So it's just about sprinkling in slowness where you can. That's what I think.
It's such a simple concept, but as women, like we're taught to feel guilty about taking taking the time for ourselves. But of course, like in the long term or throughout your cycle, it's more beneficial for you to take that time for yourself.
Definitely. It's like rest is productive, really. If you're taking the times where our body is tired, it's tired because it needs to just slow down a bit or do less. If we take that time, then that will go to the rest of the cycle, and it will like sort of spread out. I, for the past 2 cycles, have luckily, my period has come when I haven't been working and I've done nothing, and I honestly felt like a new woman when I come out the other side, and I was so like focused and so like motivated and inspired, and I'm like, I need to do this like every single. I do, like if I've got it off, I will do nothing. I don't know who I think I am. I'm like a queen. I'm just in the bed like reading my books and just like eating dark chocolate. But obviously that's not accessible for everyone. That's just the way that I do it. But you know, even just a little bit of that, you know, just locking the door in the bathroom, even if you have to sit on the toilet for 5 minutes and just slowly drink a drink, just that slowness can really do wonders, I think.
That needs to be more widely accepted.
It does.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So that sounds like giving yourself a lot of self-love practices. So how does self-love factor into what you do with your clients?
So I feel like working with cycle is like the ultimate act of self-love, because it's checking in with how you really are and sort of honoring yourself. So if you're feeling like tired, rest. If you're feeling angry, like scream and punch a pillow, whatever feels good. If you want to stay in, like if your friends are trying to get you to go out partying but you want to stay in, you know, yeah, it'd be nice to do what your friends are asking, but what about yourself? You know, you deserve the same like love and compassion. And I feel like that's one of the big things with the work I do, is just trying to help people set boundaries and honor your needs, because that's, I feel, is ultimate self-love. not just pushing and doing things because other people want you to, because I feel like that can just lead to resentment as well. Yeah, and FOMO, fear of missing out, it gets easier. You say no, I'm not going out, and it honestly, when you're like waking up the next day and you realize that you've set such a good boundary and you put yourself first, it just feels so good. It's really good. It's amazing. It's like addictive, really.
Yeah, it really is. I like have no more FOMO left in me because I love just sitting at home by myself Friday night.
Same.
It's so great. It's so great. And you just feel like you need that. Like you've been saying this whole time, like this whole conversation. You need that slow down. You need to take that time. Yeah.
Yeah, I love being alone and doing my own thing.
Yeah.
So it's like reading a book and being in my pajamas and being all cozy. I love it.
You need that recharge. You need that recharge.
Yeah.
So, so what is the most rewarding part of your job?
I think it's seeing people setting the boundaries, and when somebody like messages me and says, I was meant to be going out, but I didn't feel up to it and I'd cancelled, or something similar to that, I'm just like, yes, because it's just so empowering. And yeah, just seeing people setting the boundaries and like actually listening to the body rather than, just doing what they feel is the right thing to do. Yeah, I think that's really good.
Yeah, seeing people like step into their own like authentic self and like their needs.
Yeah, definitely.
Imagine that would be. So if you could leave one piece of advice for our listeners in regards to your menstrual cycle, what would that be? What would be the one piece of advice?
So I'd say like we have a limited amount of natural energy, and there's going to come a time where self-medicating with like coffee and sugar and living out of energetic alignment, it will catch up with you. Like I'm 36 now. I was not running on natural energy for so many years, and it caught up with me. I do have like random issues now which I feel is due to how I used to live. So yeah, just try and slow down and do less. And I know that's easier said than done because we have lives to live and there's a lot to do. But I feel like if you feel like you can't slow down and you can't just do nothing a little bit, then you probably need to do that even more, because obviously got a lot going on if you really feel like you can't just slow down a little bit. So yeah, so just give yourself that 1% as much as possible. And before you know it, that 1% will keep increasing.
It reminds me of a quote that I consistently hear, and it's, if you don't have 5 minutes to meditate, you take 20 minutes to meditate.
Definitely. It's so true. It is.
Yeah. Carving out that time for yourself. And just 1%, like we all have 1% somewhere in our day.
Oh yeah. And we wouldn't even notice it really if we just slow down a little. Like I'm a fast walker, but sometimes I'm like, what am I doing? Like, where am I even going here? I really don't need to be walking this fast. So I'm just like, right, slow down a little bit.
Yeah, like literally stopping and smelling the flowers when you're out and about, and it's so beneficial. Yeah, that's really great. So if our listeners want to connect with you, where are they able to do that?
So I'm on Instagram as Divine Butterfly Coaching. And I've got, if anybody does come over there, if there's a link in my bio and there's a few freebies on there. I've also got a few free events coming up on Zoom, so it'd be great if anybody wanted to come and join them. But yeah, that's where I am mostly, Divine Butterfly Coaching.
Oh, that's so great. Well, I highly advise our listeners, especially our female listeners, to connect with you, because I think there's so many advantages, so many benefits to connecting with your own cycle and like learning more about it, because I think so many women in our society are left in the dark about it, or confused, not really well educated. So I think you've educated us very well today. I know I've learned a lot. I'm
glad. Thank you so much for having me. It's been fun for my first time. I've loved it.
Oh, good. Well, I'm glad we got to connect with you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
That's it for our show today. Thanks for joining. Remember, you can always reach out to us on our socials, on Instagram at sisterhood_of_healing, or on TikTok at Sisterhood of Healing. We love to hear from you, so please reach out to us at any time. Thank you for journeying with us today. We'll see you next time.